Hello everyone, this is part 5 of What If Naruto Was the God of Taijutsu, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
9997. 9998. 9999. 10,000. Lee plopped down to the ground as he finished his push-ups. He was exhausted. Sweat dripped from every pore in his body and his stomach rumbled hungrily. There was no chance of him getting any food though. At least not this late at night. He had already been held captive for 3 days, but to be honest, Lee never really felt like he was a prisoner here. He wandered around as he pleased. He ate what little food they had to offer in this crappy hideout. In fact, the room he was currently in, his bedroom, was a considerable amount better than what some of the others had to put up with. Lee could think of only one reason his life could be this leisurely here. Yet those 2 words brought just a foul taste to his mouth. Momoki Zabuza. When Lee first fell free from the ice mirror, he found himself inside this very room. He later learned that it had been the room the kid with the mirrors used to stay in. Lee had cautiously snuck around at first, trying to get a feel for where he was. When he looked outside, he was completely surprised. He was near the very top of a huge tower. Forest and swamp stretched as far as his eye could see. Lee had felt his knees go weak as he realized there was no likely chance of escape from here. It had been at that moment that he had been spotted by a couple of big-looking thugs. Lee easily dispatched of the 2 of them with some taijutsu, but not before they had sounded an alarm. The once seemingly empty tower was now swarming with despicable-looking men. Lee battled endlessly while he tried to flee from the entire gang of them. Just when he thought he was at his limit and was actually going to be captured, Zabuza arrived. "This trash is my hostage," the man roared while holding his hand onto the hilt of his massive sword. "No one is to touch him but me." Got that? Lee couldn't believe it. Was this man actually protecting him? That thought was instantly crossed from Lee's mind as the shirtless man turned and buried his fist in Lee's gut. The green-clad boy fell to ground spitting up blood. The sound of a cane hitting the floor caused all the men in the room to spread wide to either side of the hallway they all stood in. Lee's sight was kind of blurry from having been hit so hard, but he was still able to make out the figure of a very short man walking down the now open path. Every step he took, he smacked his cane down on the floor, not that he seemed to have any trouble walking. Finally the man stopped walking. He was still quite a distance away. Lee guessed just outside the range of Zabuza's massive blade. It was at this moment that Lee realized this man was probably Gato. Zabuza. A nasally voice fit for the short man called the demon's name. "Tell me, why instead of the head of a master bridge builder, who may I add threatens to destroy my whole control over this country, do you bring me a child?" There was a change of plans, Gato. Zabuza practically spat. Despite being hired by this man, the demon clearly had little respect for him. "Oh, do tell." Lee's vision was now clear enough to see that this tiny man had several golden teeth and rings on every finger. His cane seemed to be tipped with a huge diamond. One of the shinobi that the bridge builder hires happens to be Might Guy, one of the strongest shinobi in Konohagakure. Not even I would be capable of beating him in a fair fight. Lee couldn't agree more with that statement. Gato pushed up his small black glasses. "So was that masked brat you had with you taken out then?" "I don't see him around." "No, I purposely allowed Might Guy to take him hostage." "What? Why? That makes no sense," the short man practically shouted. Lee had just thought the exact same, but Gato wasn't done. He might very well be dead already. That's a waste of a resource. Might Guy won't kill him. Zabuza spoke as if he was talking to a child now. As long as he keeps Haku alive, he'll believe that his student here is alive. So what if he lives? How does this benefit you in any way? Gato slammed his cane down as he spoke. Zabuza sighed and ran one hand through his short hair. "You don't get anything, do you?" The short man sneered at this comment. "Worry causes heavy stress on the body. Stress causes you to lose focus. In the shinobi world, the more stress you have built up, the more deadly for you it can become. Not only does Might Guy have this to worry about, but he still has to protect the bridge builder while keeping an eye on Haku. This means he'll have to sleep very lightly and very little. By the time we next meet, he'll be exhausted. Gato appeared to mull this thought over in his head for a few moments. Whatever, do what you want, the man finally said before turning away and walking in the other direction. The crowd of thugs that had been around them dispersed slowly, all of them grumbling. Zabuza, too, started to walk away. You are wrong, you know. The man turned to look at Lee as he spoke. Guy-sensei cannot possibly lose to you. No matter what, no one can defeat him. The older man snorted. Your faith in others isn't befitting of a shinobi. You better grow up. Zabuza's foot was the last thing Lee had seen before passing out. The sound of footsteps outside of Lee's door pulled him away from his thoughts of the past. Silently, the boy got up and walked over to his wall, standing right next to his door. The sound of quiet voices reached his ears. Two shadows appeared right in front of his door. What if we get caught? Lee heard one voice whisper. Relax, would you? Everyone is out, including this kid. We got nothing to worry about. Another gruff voice answered. Yeah, but he's a shinobi, you know. Can we really kill him? Lee's eyes widened slightly. They were planning to kill him. The other man chuckled very quietly. He's a genin, still wet behind the ears. We got this. But what about Momchi-san? Surely he'll raise hell about it. The other man continued to spout worries. Listen, no one likes the guy anyways, besides, how can he prove it was us? Let's just do this. The door to Lee's room swung open after the man said this. Lee tensed up and very quietly slipped into his Goken stance. Without warning, a hand reached out from the darkness and touched his shoulder. Lee had to put every ounce of his shinobi training into effect to keep from yelping. He slowly turned around to see Zabuza standing there, one hand on his shoulder, the other in front of his face, his finger making the quiet sign. Lee couldn't help but wonder when and how he had entered the room. It just went to prove that the man really earned his title of Jonin and one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. The two men stepped into the room and both stopped as they eyed the bed from where they stood. That's strange, he's not in bed. These were the last words either one of them uttered as Zabuza stepped forward and swung his sword in a horizontal arc. Both men's heads were sliced completely off before they even had a chance to scream. Blood sprayed everywhere, painting the walls and door and the two shinobi. Lee's eyes were wide with shock. This hadn't been the first time he had seen death, but these were the most senseless kills he had ever seen. Zabuza-san, Lee shouted as he rounded on the tall man who was sliding his sword back into place on his back. Thanks aren't necessary, kid. I just can't afford these assholes messing up my plans, Zabuza said as he stepped over the headless bodies in an attempt to leave the room. You think I want to thank you? Lee roared. You just killed these men without even blinking. You did not have to go that far. Simply disabling them would have been enough. Lee stepped into the pool of blood that was forming at his feet. I thought I told you to grow up already. Zabuza's voice remained level as he turned and looked at the genin. Do you really think these men would have learned from that? Lee opened his mouth to respond but snapped it shut immediately. You know it too, these men would have just gotten angrier. They would have been back with more men. I did everyone here a favor by ending these two idiots' lives before they involved more of them. This may be hard for a goody little brat like you to understand, but the only way these people will ever learn is through death. The faster you understand that, the longer I guarantee you'll live. Lee clenched his hands shut and grit his teeth hard. How did you become this way? Lee's question caught the taller man off guard. Lee looked up when he didn't hear a response. What happened to you that you've grown up so twisted and without emotions? Lee was shouting now. Other thugs had been woken by the noise and were coming to check it out. Upon seeing the blood, the noise level increased even further. Do you care at all about that kid you abandoned with my team? What are these people to you? Aren't they your allies? Listen, you brat. Zabuza grabbed Lee by the collar of his clothes and hoisted him into the air. I live for myself and only myself. If it wasn't for Zabuza's face bandages, he probably would have spit in Lee's face. These little shits you call my allies mean nothing to me. They are only tools of which can be disposed of. The same goes for Haku. He's simply just a little more sharper sword than these dull, broken pieces of junk. That's why he's with your team. Even Gato is just a tool, one to supply me with money. Zabuza dropped Lee onto the ground. The boy fell into the pool of blood on his butt. He hadn't expected the early release. He stared up at Zabuza with wide eyes. He never knew such a man could exist in this world. The big man turned and walked away. The now big crowd of thugs quickly moved aside as he walked through. No one wanted to mess with him. I'll find out how got like this. There must be a reason. Lee whispered under his breath. Haku slowly rolled out of the tent he was in. He stood up and did a few stretches. If his internal clock was working correctly, then it should be about 4:30 in the morning. This was his third day being prisoner, and while Haku was able to walk around somewhat freely, he really felt like the word described his situation quite justly. Haku thought this as he walked out of the small clearing that Team Guy had set up camp in. Going somewhere. Haku would have jumped had he not already been used to this. Might Guy leaned up against the back of a tree, staring at Haku intently. I just have to use the bathroom, I have no intention of harming the bridge builder. Haku walked over to a small bush and pulled the front of his kimono uniform up. It had been like this the whole time. Haku felt completely suffocated. No matter where or how he moved, it seemed this man's eyes were on him. Yet, maybe that was a good thing. It meant Zabuza's plan was working, didn't it? Haku had to wonder. 3 days straight and the man didn't even appear remotely fatigued. Instead, his energy remained boundless. It was incredibly eerie. The sound of yawning right next to him made Haku realize he was losing his focus. Naruto stood right next to him and was also taking a leak. Haku was painfully reminded that it wasn't just Might Guy. This whole team seemed to have unlimited energy. They were always up incredibly early. Naruto and Hinata spent all day training these past couple days while Guy would take Haku to the bridge to keep an eye on him and guard the bridge builder at the same time. Haku hated it this way. They didn't ever bind him up or anything. That was how completely hopeless Haku was in this situation that they didn't even feel the need to restrain him. Albeit, they had taken away his senbon. I'm going to kick your ass when this 2 weeks is up. Haku glanced briefly at the blonde who was peeing right next to him. You don't know anything about me. Haku replied simply, saying things like that set Naruto off pretty easily. For that matter, anything he said set the blonde off. You asshole. You kidnapped Bushy Brow. I'll never forgive you for that. Naruto zipped his pants up and turned in the other direction, going back to their clearing. He hadn't attempted to hit him as Haku had expected. Perhaps his sensei had given him a big enough warning after last time. After all, they couldn't afford to rough him up too much. Lee's life depended on it. Tell me again why I should believe that you can't just use those mirrors to get back to Gator's base. Haku sighed. Guy had asked him the same question a couple times before already. He was probably trying to say if he would change up his story at all. I can only create mirrors in a location that is within my range of vision. After creating them, it takes a lot of chakra to sustain them. Holding up just that one at such a distance was incredibly taxing. When I lost consciousness, that mirror shattered, just like the ones you saw. Haku repeated what he had told him before, word for word. Silence rang between the two for a few moments. Are you perhaps hoping that I could take you to Lee-san that way? Haku knew that wasn't what Guy wanted, but maybe he could get the man to reveal some form of fatigue. Of course not. You heard what I told Naruto. Lee has a much better chance of surviving if we play things by Zabuza's rules. He's really much more interested in killing me and Tazuna-san than him. Guy stared down at the boy before him. Although, I must say, I feel badly for you. He clearly has no affection for you at all, even as a pupil. I am not a pupil. I am Zabuza-san's tool. I am to be used as he sees fit and disposed of when I've gone dull. That is my only purpose in life. Haku spoke the words that he had long since etched into his heart. You really are a sad child. Guy sounded sincere as he spoke. You remind me a lot of Naruto in fact. Haku almost gave an uncharacteristic snort but stopped himself. If he knows what it's like to be alone, then he must be truly strong. It's not the pain of being alone that makes one strong. It's for protecting the ones you love that you become strong. Guy spoke as if he was Haku's sensei now. Haku turned around and walked back into the clearing now as well. Having been alone amplifies that desire. Guy didn't respond. Instead, He followed the boy leisurely back into the clearing. Hinata was up now and had a small fire going. Naruto sat next to her, skinning a couple of rabbits the two of them had caught last night. Haku was impressed that neither of them complained. Instead of being inside a warm house, using a kitchen stove, they were out here. Tazuna had offered to let the two of them stay in his home with him and his family, but they had both declined. Naruto had said it felt more like an actual mission when they were camping out. Haku suspected it was actually so they could get right to training. Do either of you have any questions on what I've written down in your scrolls? Guy asked as he watched Hinata throw the rabbits into the pot. Guy had written scrolls about how they were supposed to train while he and Haku were at the bridge. Of course, Haku knew he had done this simply so he couldn't learn how they were preparing. The less he knew, the more beneficial it was for them. They both shook their heads at his question. We've been doing like you suggested and have talked to each other when either of us has had a question about what's on the scroll. Naruto answered for the both of them. Does that mean you've been the only one asking the questions? Haku couldn't describe it, but there was a certain joy he got from picking on the blonde. He had never gotten this kind of enjoyment before. Maybe spending time with this group was beginning to erode his brain. Naruto blushed and instead of shouting a comeback decided to glare quietly at the other boy. Guess that means I'm right. Haku smiled lightly. Something really was wrong with him. Your food. A bowl of rabbit meat was tossed to him. Haku barely caught it before he turned his gaze to the owner of the cold voice. Thank you, Hinata-san. Haku inclined his head before grabbing a pair of chopsticks to eat. The Hyuga girl rarely spoke around him, and when she did it was always with a very clipped tone. Haku didn't blame her either. He had stolen their teammate. They had no reason to treat him kindly. With all the food having been passed out, silence reigned over the clearing as the group ate their food. Naruto was of course the first one done. He inhaled everything with such incredible haste that it made Haku kind of sick. No one should be able to consume food like that. Yet, Might Guy was always a close second. Haku would be willing to bet Lee was much the same. Only he and Hinata took their time eating their meal. Hey Guy-sensei. Naruto talked to his teacher enthusiastically. It didn't fit the mood of the morning at all. Yes, my young student. Haku winced. Yet Guy's response fit even less. Haku imagined his voice could probably be heard in the nearby village. Teach me how to open the Hachiman. Bushy Brow was telling me about it and it sounds so cool. Haku's ears perked up at this. Maybe the man would shed some light on that mysterious power he had used which easily blew away Zabuza's mist. Might Guy let out a loud boisterous laugh. Opening the gates is no easy feat, Naruto. While I would be more than happy to teach you at a later date, focus on the training you have for now. Lee can open a couple of them himself. When we get him back I'll have him assist me in teaching you. Naruto nodded excitedly. That sounds like a good idea. I really want to get training now. Naruto sat up abruptly and began doing a series of stretches. Haku couldn't believe how fast the kid's attitude changed. It almost seemed like he had a switch. That's the spirit. Train on, Naruto. Haku cringed at Guy's continued use of his booming voice. If you are done, Haku-san, let us be off. They have work to be done. Guy turned his attention to the black-haired boy. Yeah, all right. Haku got up and turned to Hinata. The food was delicious again, he said as he bowed. Hinata didn't respond as she continued to nibble on her own food. Guy lightly grabbed a hold of Haku's shoulder and led him away from the clearing. Naruto and Hinata were left with another awkward silence as he continued stretching. Naruto-kun. Hinata sounded much more timid now that Haku wasn't around. Yeah, what's up, Hinata? Naruto stopped his stretching and turned to stare at her. She blushed slightly from the attention. It was strange, when they were in a group she could talk to him normally, but alone, even during such a serious mission, she found herself reverting back to how she used to be. I had a question about something here on my scroll. Hinata almost breathed a sigh of relief. She was still able to keep her stutter from returning. That was a good sign. No you don't. Naruto caught her lie without even thinking about it. Hinata's face turned very red at how straightforward an answer he gave. Listen, I appreciate that you're trying to make me feel better, but I don't really mind all that much, Hinata. You're really smart. Hinata's face remained red for a different reason now. Sorry. She muttered out. Don't apologize. Naruto sat down next to her. You're always so nice, there's no need to be sorry. Anyways, what was it in your scroll again? Hakusho Kaiten. Hinata whispered, or heavy in her voice. Just thinking about it made her forget her embarrassment. It is the ultimate defense taught only to the Hyuga of the main branch. That guy sensei would actually know how they do it is incredible. Well, that's guy sensei for you. If it's taijutsu, he can do it or at least knows it. Naruto spoke highly for one of the only men he had truly come to respect. Although, I'd wish he'd teach me something cool like a move. My list kinda sucks. Naruto pulled out the scroll he had. Playing the rock, paper, scissors with myself didn't make sense at all until you explained it. Naruto continued to talk. While it's cool that I know what happens when they pop, I don't see how that can benefit me entirely. Guess it's one of those look underneath the underneath deals. Although, training my clones to survive multiple hits is going to be useful, if I can actually get it. Naruto let his scroll flop down to the ground. You can do it, Naruto-kun. Hinata cheered for him quietly. You can do anything, she added in an even quieter tone. Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Hinata. For bushy brow, we'll definitely master this stuff. Naruto stood up quickly and resumed his stretches. Yes, for Lee-senpai. Hinata got up and also began stretching. I can also do it because you're here with me. Hinata wanted to add this aloud but choose against it. You don't blame me, do you? Hinata was surprised by Naruto's sudden question. Blame you? She didn't understand where that thought had even come from. Yeah, I mean, I'm the one who wanted to do this C-rank mission and all. Doesn't that make it my fault that things turned out this way? If I had just been okay with training, then things wouldn't have happened this way. You're wrong. Hinata startled Naruto with her shout. Why you can't blame yourself? They had both stopped stretching again and Naruto stared at Hinata in shock. C-rank mission aren't supposed to involve such powerful shinobi. It was supposed to be basic protection. Besides, it would have happened to someone. It just happened to be us, so please, Naruto-kun, don't blame yourself. Hinata suddenly ran at Naruto and embraced him in a hug, tears slowly leaking down her eyes. Hey, I get it. Naruto lightly patted the girl's back. I'm sorry, Hinata. I won't say anything stupid again. Naruto slowly unentangled himself. Sorry. Hinata quickly began wiping her tears away. I didn't mean to get so worked up. I keep telling you not to apologize. You don't do anything wrong. Naruto scratched the back of his head as he spoke. Besides, you're right. If it's anyone's fault, it's that Haku guy. Hinata nodded gently. It's strange though. I can't bring myself to feel any resentment towards him. Really, I thought you were ready to knock his lights out the way you look at him. Naruto was surprised to hear Hinata's confession. No, I learned to act that way around my family. It's the best way to hide my emotions. Hinata hated bringing up her family, even if it was with Naruto. I kinda get what you mean though. Naruto quickly steered the conversation away. Even he knew that speaking about Hinata's family was taboo. Who would have guessed that he'd have that kind of face? Huh. Hinata looked up at Naruto in confusion. I mean, honestly, that dude is cuter than Sakura-chan. I really thought he was a girl at first. Naruto blushed and laughed nervously as he talked. Pretty weird, huh? Hinata's face fell as Naruto spoke. How could it be? She lost even to another boy. It was completely humiliating. Naruto-kun, you idiot. Hinata turned away from him and resumed her stretches. Hey, Hinata. Naruto called to her but she didn't respond. What did I do? Come on, Hinata. Haku continued to hammer away as he drove the wooden plank into the supports of the bridge. He found it terribly ironic. It was his mission to kill the bridge builder, yet here he was, helping construct the bridge. Life sure is strange. Haku mumbled aloud to himself. Sure is, Tazuna said as he walked up next to him and began laying down more boards. He set to work at hammering himself. Is this all right? Haku asked him. There are plenty nails lying around. One flick of my wrist and they'll be buried in your neck. Tazuna started sweating slightly but responded in a calm voice. You won't do that. How can you be so sure? Haku was perplexed. The man wasn't lying to him. I get a different feeling from you than I did that Zabuza character. Tazuna paused as he thought about his answer. You don't like to kill. I'm not sure how I can tell, but I know it. In fact, I don't think you like hurting others at all. You only do it because that Zabuza guy tells you to. In actuality, you're super nice. I'm impressed. Haku continued to nail away at his board. Is that perhaps the insight that comes from old age? Tazuna let out a long laugh. I'm not that old, even if I am a grandpa. I just know a good kid when I see one. Silence passed between the two of them after his last comment. Tazuna, we need to talk. Haku and the old man looked up to see another equally old man standing there nervously. He held an uneasy eye on Haku. Ah, Jaichi, how can I help you? Tazuna smiled at his long-time friend and stood up as he greeted him. Listen, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I want to quit working on the bridge. Tazuna's smile slowly disappeared off his face as Jaichi spoke. Not you too. Tazuna whispered. Look, Tazuna, I understand that we're doing a good thing, but what's the point if Gato has you killed? What good will it do? Jaichi tried to implore Tazuna to see his reason. Haku felt his palms sweat as the man talked. He continued to hammer away in an attempt to distract himself. Let's all quit. Quit building this bridge. Impossible. Tazuna shouted, surprising not only Jaichi, but Haku as well. This is our bridge. We began building it together and I intend to finish it. This bridge is a symbol of our nation's courage. If we stop now, then Gato truly has won. Tazuna stared hard at Jaichi for a minute. You know what? Just don't bother showing up again. I'll finish this bridge even if it's by myself. Tazuna walked past his once friend, knocking his shoulder as he went. Tazuna, don't be this way. Jaichi called after him. Shove it. Tazuna grabbed another plank of wood and brought it back to where Haku was. He immediately set back to work. Jaichi sighed and stood there for another few moments, trying to think of something to say. In the end, he gave up and walked away. Tazuna-san. Haku said quietly. Tazuna made a small noise to show Haku he was listening. I have no right to say this, but until the 2 weeks is up, I will help you build this bridge. Haku wasn't sure what compelled him to say that. Maybe it had been the old man's speech, but there was no taking it back now. It was out there. Tazuna didn't respond and Haku thought he was still mad until he looked over. The man was smiling, even if just a little. Unbeknown to either, Guy had watched the whole thing. There was an unreadable expression on his face. Things had been relatively peaceful in Gato's hideout for a few days since the incident. No one dared try to take Lee's life after the violent decapitation of two of their own. Lee had been here a full week now. Despite what he had said, he had made no progress in finding out anything about Zabuza. Lee wasn't deterred though. As long as things remained calm, he should be able to get the chance. Yet, perhaps inevitably, things did not remain calm. Gato returned today from some sort of business trip and he was seething mad. Where is he? Where is the bastard that hacked up 2 of my men? The short man strolled around the cafeteria of the tower, his cane clacking menacingly against the floor. All the thugs sat at tables and at their meals. It reminded Lee of school, which was kind of a funny thought. What's all this racket about? The man Gato was looking for spoke up as he strolled leisurely into the room. You. What the hell do you think you're doing? Gato pointed his cane at the shirtless shinobi. Getting food. Even shinobi eat, you know. Lee hadn't realized it at first, but Zabuza actually had a sense of humor. A twisted one, but a sense of one nonetheless. That's not what I'm talking about. Spit flew from Gato's mouth and into the faces of several seated thugs. They didn't dare breathe a word of it though. Why did 2 of my men have to die, huh? If you ask me, they were doing me a favor. What has that kid done for us? He runs around the place all day working out like a maniac. He doesn't contribute to anything yet he continues to eat our food. That's wasted money right there. How are you going to reimburse me for this, huh Zabuza? Gato slammed his cane down so hard Lee thought it would break. I'll bring you the bridge builder's head. That'll cover everything. Zabuza replied simply. No, I've had enough. Zabuza's eyes narrowed at Gato's words. You cost too much for no results. I'm through with you. We'll raid the village ourselves. Right, men. A chorus of cheers hailed from all the thugs in the room. Lee took their excitement as a chance to slip into the back corner and just watch. He slower pulled his weights off from where he was. Just try it, Zabuza answered. The lot of you won't even get close to touching that man. No one here has the power to take down a jonin. We'll see about that. One man picked up one of his weapons. These men carried them with them at all times, so the cafeteria was loaded with them. I'll take your head first. Then the bridge builders. The man charged forward. As if he started a chain reaction, dozens of them charged forward with him. Zabuza laughed happily as the men charged at him. He grabbed his sword and swung it downwards, splitting the first man who had charged clean in half. Everyone else stopped at that moment. Zabuza looked up and they all took a couple steps back. Those weren't the eyes of someone who was sane. Demon. Someone shouted. Is that it? I gut down one of you and the rest lose their spines. Come on you cowards. I thought we were having a revolt. Come on. Zabuza took a couple steps closer as he roared at them. They all took a couple steps back. We can get him. Someone shouted in a shaky voice. Yeah, there's only one of him. There's a ton of us. Another man shouted, sounding a little more confident than the last. A dull roar erupted from about half the crowd. They slowly began to inch back closer. Stop it you idiots. Gato sounded as if he was in pain. At me. Look at me. All the thugs turned around and were completely blown away by what they saw. Lee had Gato's arm twisted behind his back and held a kunai to his throat. No one move. Lee shouted, twisting Gato's arm for added effect. No. Gato shouted. Stop. You'll break it. If I kill you right now, this whole thing ends. Lee said this to Gato but shouted it so everyone else could hear. You're the only reason the bridge builder has to be killed. That's the only reason my team is caught in this conflict. Kill him and you won't make it out of here alive. Zabuza said as he slowly walked through the crowd. Everyone here, including me, needs this man for money. Zabuza stopped walking. He was directly in between the crowd of thugs and Lee now. Of course, Gato did just say he's through with me. The demon ninja let his threat hang in the air. Gato caught on fast. Haha, come on Zabuza, you know I was just playing with you. In fact, I was thinking of doubling, screw that, tripling your salary. Just please, get me out of this. That's more like it, Gato. Zabuza practically purred. A wave of pure killing intent suddenly flooded the room. Those closest to Zabuza slipped to their knees immediately. Some even passed out. Gato was among them. Lee didn't collapse but his knees became wobbly and his grip loosened on Gato enough to allow him to fall to the ground. A second later and Zabuza had Lee by the neck, slamming him to the ground. He put his mouth close to the boy's ear. Unfortunately for you, I'm going to have to make an example of you. Force your body limp and it won't hurt as bad. Lee had no other choice than to do what he said. The entire group was seated at Tazuna's kitchen table for dinner. No matter how many times it happened, Haku still couldn't get used to it. Tsunami, Tazuna's daughter, was currently setting all the food down while Naruto passed all the plates and glasses out to everyone. It's always nice to have so many guests in the house, Tsunami said as she finished setting down the food and took her seat. Haku took pleasure in the fact that Naruto looked just as out of place as he felt. Perhaps he wasn't used to this type of setting either. Inari. Tsunami called for her son to come join the table. Haku had only ever seen the boy once and the experience had left a bad taste in his mouth. The kid had completely lost all hope. He did nothing other than cry all day and blame it on others. It seemed to hit a little too close to home for Haku to want to even think about it. Maybe it was because Haku felt like he was looking at his past self when he looked at him, but it actually made him want to strangle the kid. Again though, Haku was able to take comfort in the fact that Naruto seemed to share his sentiments. Just listening to Guy and Tazuna talk, Haku was able to infer that the two had been in a couple nasty arguments already. I don't want any. The boy shouted from the other room of the house. Haku sighed. This didn't sound good. Sounded like another conflict was about to erupt, and he was going to be around for this one. Inari, right this minute. His mother shouted. A few seconds later and the sound of heavy footsteps coming down the hall reached their ears. A moment later and Inari entered the room. I don't want to eat with these losers and that murderer. Inari roared. Haku's face fell slightly at being called a murderer. Watch who you're calling a loser you crybaby. Naruto shouted at the boy. I'm not a crybaby. Inari screamed back. And I call you losers because there's no way you can ever beat Gato. You try so hard, but what are you going to accomplish? You'll all just end up dead. You've already lost one teammate. That tears it. Naruto stood up so fast that the chair he was sitting in was toppled over. Naruto-kun. No. Hinata sat up too, but she wasn't fast enough. Naruto delivered a fist right into the side of Inari's head, sending the boy crashing to the ground. Naruto sat there breathing heavily for a few seconds over the wailing boy. I'm sorry. I'm going to go cook my own food. Naruto left the house in a hurry. Everyone else sat in complete silence. Inari's crying was the only thing that could be heard at the moment. I never want to see you guys again. Inari shouted as he too ran from the house. Inari. Tsunami called after her son but made no move to go after him. She couldn't bring herself to. Instead she looked back at her food, small tears rolling down her face. I'm sorry, Guy said, but after what he said about my other student, I couldn't bring myself to stop Naruto. I'll personally scold him and we will both swim 1,000 laps around the bay with 500-pound weights attached. Guy gave his usual challenge, but it lacked the fire it normally had. Perhaps the fatigue was finally starting to get to him. No, we're the ones that are sorry. Tazuna responded, his head bowed in shame. You're such good people, yet you are talked to in such a way. Once this bridge is complete though, he'll come around. He'll see what great people you are. Tazuna did his best to smile at him. At least let me go apologize to your son personally. Hitting a child is unforgivable after all. Guy began to stand up. Guy-sensei, I'll talk to him. You stay here. Hinata, who was still up, immediately went for the door. Yes, thank you, Hinata. Guy slid back down to his seat. Haku got up too and began to follow after Hinata. No one tried to stop him. Inari sat on the edge of the dock. His tears continued to fall from his face and hit the water beneath him. He was so lost in thought he didn't even hear Hinata come up to him. You mind if I sit here? Inari jumped at her soft voice. He looked up at Hinata and then looked away from her without saying a word. She took that as a yes and sat down. I know Naruto-kun can seem very harsh sometimes, but he always means well when he speaks. Typical, you would side with him. Inari interrupted her. He wiped his nose and continued to look away from her. Tazuna-san told us about your father. Naruto-kun grew up without ever knowing his dad, you know. Inari finally looked over at her in surprise. My own father looks at me with disgust whenever he sees me. Hinata whispered. She shook her head to get away from the thoughts. This wasn't about her. It was about them. It's kind of funny. You both say how you don't understand each other, yet when I look at you, I see Naruto-kun when he was younger. What do you mean? How can I be anything like that guy? So what if he never knew his dad? That just means he doesn't understand the pain of losing him. Tears began to slide from his face again. Naruto-kun may not have known what it was like to have a dad, but that doesn't mean his life wasn't hard. Our whole village hates him. Hates him for something I don't even understand. They were all so cruel to Naruto-kun. I used to watch him all the time, you know. He would train every day to become strong so he could be accepted. Yet he always failed. When he failed he would cry. Not much different from you. Inari couldn't believe what he was hearing. Naruto used to cry. He stopped crying though. Inari barely managed to ask. One day he just quit. Hinata stared out over the water, memories of Naruto flooded into her head. He quit crying but he kept training all the time. He still didn't have anyone that accepted him, but he didn't cry. I think he realized that it wasn't going to help. He just simply gave up crying. And thanks to him, I learned to quit crying over my failures too. I used to be so miserable. Every time I messed up I would lock myself in my room and cry. Now, thanks to Naruto-kun, I don't cry when I fail. I get back up and try again. No matter how hard it seems, I won't ever give up. I hope you'll try too, Inari-san. Inari just stared blankly at Hinata. She smiled at him and slowly sat up and then walked away. He looked back out over the water. No more tears came to his eyes. He had a lot more on his mind now. Did you hear everything? Hinata asked as she passed the corner of the house. Yeah. Haku, who had been leaning against the wall, followed after Hinata. You have a similar pain to us, don't you, Haku-san? Hinata asked as they walked into the forest. Yes. I used to cry a lot too. I cried until all my tears were gone though. When Zabuza-san found me I was already dried up. He gave me meaning. I live only for him. Haku wondered who he was saying that for now. Soon, the sound of a raging battle reached their ears. They came to the clearing where the Naruto and Hinata trained endlessly every day. 4 Narutos were currently mixed up in an all-out brawl. They wailed on each other with all their strength. To both Haku and Hinata's amazement, not a single clone popped from the terrible punishment they were receiving. Naruto-san really is something else. Haku murmured as he watched the scene in front of himself. Hinata could only nod as she stared at him, a small blush on her face. Ah, I see, Haku mumbled after looking back and forth between the two. He doubted Hinata even heard him. Haku took this time to notice something else. The ground Naruto was fighting in was trashed. There were numerous marks that looked like someone had been spinning in. Next to nearly every one of these marks was a pile of baths. Just what kind of training were they going through? Haku couldn't help but wonder. Are you sure this is something I should be seeing? Haku asked as he began to step away. It doesn't matter, Hinata answered. She didn't move from her spot. Don't forget, Hinata-san. In just a few days we'll be enemies again. We'll be pitted against each other in a life and death battle. Haku turned his back to the two of them and began to walk away. You won't kill us, Hinata said too quietly for him to hear. I know it. It was day 12. It had been 5 days since the last incident and yet Lee still ached all over. Zabuza didn't hold back one bit as he thrashed the young genin in every sense of the word. Yet none of that mattered. Not to Lee anyways. Despite the terrible beating Zabuza had given him, Lee had felt he earned something from the demon ninja. Perhaps it was his respect. Lee couldn't be sure. Zabuza-san. Look what I got. Lee walked up to a small fire that Zabuza had going and dumped a small dough down at the man's feet. The two of them were now en route to the bridge. In 2 days Lee would be able to see his teammates again. Too bad it wouldn't be a very joyous reunion. Not bad, kid. For not having any ninjutsu you are surprisingly adaptive. The shirtless shinobi immediately set to work at skinning the dough. It is not that surprising really, Lee said as he plopped down. I have to be after all. It is the only reason I am able to be a shinobi in the first place. Well, that and Guy sensei. Might Guy, I can't wait to rip that man's head from his shoulders. Zabuza chuckled low to himself. I wish you would not speak in such a way. It is most unyouthful, Lee chided the older shinobi. Youth, youth, youth. That's all you freaking talk about. Zabuza whipped the skin of the dough to the side as he finished. You should tell me more about your youth, Zabuza-san. How did you become such a twisted man? Lee talked as blunt as possible. Do you want to die before we get there? I'm still pretty young, damn it. Zabuza snarled at Lee. The green-clad boy didn't respond. Instead he stared at Zabuza with wide eyes. Fine, you want to know something about my past? Lee nodded enthusiastically. To pass the academy in my village, you had to kill a classmate in a one-on-one fight. All of Lee's enthusiasm died right there. So you know what I did? Lee didn't respond. I wiped out my entire class. Since then, they abolished that custom. It was when they heard of this exploit that I was recruited to be trained with one of the 7 swordsmen. Lee narrowed his eyes suspiciously. I see, so secretly, you're actually a pacifist. Did you listen to a word I said? Zabuza shouted at the genin. I killed my entire class. How does that make me a pacifist? Yes, but because of you, that custom was removed, right? Lee waved his finger in the air. So by killing you class, you saved half of the lives that are currently employed in Kirigakure today. And you call me twisted? What kind of logic is that? Zabuza was completely shocked by the boy's optimism. That is the logic of youth. Lee took a dramatic pose as he shouted to the sky. Sit down, you freak. Lee immediately did as he was told, but a big smile lingered on his face. What are you smiling at? It was starting to weird Zabuza out. I knew you were not all bad. I mean, you traveled with that kid, Haku. No one who has kid with them can be bad. Lee continued to smile brightly at Zabuza. Zabuza threw his hands in the air in defeat. Think whatever you want. I still intend to take the bridge builder's life tomorrow. Not to mention your sensei's. Gato will pay big once this works out. Lee stared quietly at Zabuza for a few seconds. How did you end up in Gato's gang? I mean, why did you leave Kiri? It's a long story, kid, and not one I like to tell, so I'll give you the short version. Zabuza scratched his head as he thought where to start. I attempted to take over the village and failed. I've been on the run ever since. I met Gato by chance and it seemed to fit. If I can get this money, I can afford to go back and try again. This time I'll hire another village. Maybe Kumo or something. Zabuza grabbed a jug of water and started to drink. Instead of that, just team up with us and come to Konoha. Zabuza immediately spit his water out. Don't say just ridiculous things. There's no way that's possible. Zabuza shouted. Sure it is, Hokage-sama is really understanding. I'm sure if you explain the situation he'll be more than happy to help. Lee continued to smile at the demon ninja. You know what? I've lost my appetite. Zabuza doused out the fire and the darkness of the night took over. Hey, wait, I'm still hungry though. Lee shouted. Too bad, go to sleep, brat. Zabuza laid down and rolled away so his back was to the genin. You know, you can protest all you want, but I know you're a good guy, deep down there. Despite being energetic just a second ago, Lee now sounded sleepy. Quote. Zabuza said nothing to Lee now. Instead he let silence claim the area for the rest of the night. Here's the plan. Guy spoke with complete authority now as he looked over his two students. The two of you are to stay here for 15 minutes. Once that time is up, charge in no matter what. Lee's life is on the line. Yes. Hinata and Naruto shouted together. All right. Tazuna-san, you ready? Guy turned to the old bridge builder who nodded at him. No matter what happens, I just want you all to know that I think I made the right choice in hiring you guys. Thank you for everything. Tazuna bowed to them. Don't speak like it's over yet. You'll definitely complete that bridge. Naruto attempted to cheer the old man up. Well, let's go. Guy began to walk away. I guess I'll see you two on the battlefield. Haku muttered as he waved to the two genin. He then hurried after Guy and Tazuna. This wasn't good, he realized. He was going to have to crush these feelings here in a few short minutes. In no time the small group arrived at the bridge to find it completely shrouded in a thick mist. Guess he's already here. Guy mumbled. He looked to Tazuna. I'm ready. Let's go save your student. Guy nodded and the three of them walked into the mist. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.